The lottery balls are in and the combine is over, so let's do a quick first round mock draft. AJ Dybantsa is the #1 prospect on my board, and I expect him to be the #1 pick in the draft as well, though it's not a surefire conclusion. I don't think you can pass up on AJ's combination of incredible self-creation, positional ball handling size, improved in-season playmaking, which has been a trend over his career, as well as his athletic tools. The biggest knocks on Dybantsa are his three-pointer and his defense. From deep, he finished at 33%, taking 4 triples a game, so I don't mind that at all, especially taking his context and usage into account. I expect him to be fine. Then, on defense, Dybantsa was pretty sleepy off the ball in college. He was not a good defender at BYU. But I think his tools make him at the very least capable in the NBA. And putting Dybantsa's stock rates to the side, I'm not really sure I see anything that is super concerning or disqualifying on D. I'm noticing a lot of people almost have Darren Peterson to the Utah Jazz as a foregone conclusion, but actually I've opted for Cameron Boozer here instead. The Duke forward racked up all sorts of awards as a freshman while imposing himself in the paint, on the glass, and even as a playmaker basically every single night. On top of that, Boozer also made about 39% of his threes, so he projects to be a pretty damn good shooter. I like the idea of sending Boozer to the Jazz, where he can play in these almost 3 big lineups next to Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen. We've seen Utah have success with these looks in the past, with Markkanen alongside Kyle Filipowski and Walker Kessler. Now, keep in mind, I'm playing this mock straight up, no trades, but I'm sure the Utah Jazz and their governor, Ryan Smith, would love AJ Dybantsa as well. That leaves Darren Peterson at #3 to the Grizzlies, which I think is an awesome fit also. That pick and roll duo with Zach Edey would be super enticing, not just for Peterson to hopefully flourish as a playmaker, which we didn't really get to see in college, but also considering how much space the Canadian big would clear out for the Kansas prospect as a scorer. I think Peterson is a superstar, but he's third on my personal board right now because I still have some concerns about whether his playmaking is good enough to be an NBA point guard full-time, and now whether he'll be able to constantly apply rim pressure. On defense, I'm still super high on Peterson. Edey can shut down the paint, while Peterson, Cedric Coward, and Jalen Wells hound attackers on the perimeter. The Chicago Bulls are in an awesome spot at #4, where I think Caleb Wilson is a pretty easy fit for them unless one of the top 3 unexpectedly drops. New Bulls basketball chief Bryson Graham has talked about wanting players with slap, meaning size, length, athleticism, and physicality, so that just about embodies Wilson. Thinking about the NBA, I'm viewing Wilson in the mold of a Pascal Siakam type of player. He's a super athletic scorer with enticing face-up flashes, who, once he gets into the league, especially in this rebuilding context, should flesh out his ball handling and passing. However, I will urge caution with Wilson's defense. His highlights and numbers make it look more impactful than it is on a play-by-play basis, where the UNC prospect is still fairly prone to lapses and frustrating mistakes. The more I think about it, I'm not too sure it makes sense for the Clippers to take a guard at #5, so I've opted for Michigan and Spain center Alay Mata instead. Darius Garland should not prevent the Clippers from picking a guard, to be clear, but I think Mata has just as much upside, and he's a cleaner fit for a team that probably never wants to rebuild for too long. My concern with Garland and Keaton Wagler is that the backcourt would become way too skinny, unathletic, and reliant on tough three-pointers. I'm also concerned about Kingston Flemings and LeBaron Philon being far too skinny, especially on the offensive end. Then, Darius Acuff Jr. is a solid fit who can toggle on and off the ball, but frankly, the defense would be terrible. In turn, I've gone for Mata, who has outlier traits at 7'3", and who I think could really blossom on a Clippers team that has proven it can develop bigs. Fairly tough blow for Brooklyn here, falling to number 6 after how their last few seasons have gone, but I think there's still a chance for the Nets to come away with pretty good value in this draft. Maybe it's a risk, but I've gone for Michael Brown Jr. here. At his very best, Brown reminds me of LaMelo Ball, and like the Clippers with their bigs, I really trust Nets head coach Jordi Fernandez to get the most out of his guards. He also loves three-pointers and unselfish playmakers, so that fits Brown to a T. The Louisville freshman's back issues that hampered him during college are probably what's most concerning, but I don't think the Nets will mind too much. Now, this might seem like a slightly odd pick after Brooklyn already drafted Yegor Diomin, Nolan Traoré, Ben Sahaf, and even Danny Wolf last year, but I think Brown will be a genuine primary ball handler in the NBA. I'm not sure that any of those 4 will be going forward. For the Sacramento Kings, at number 7, Darius Acuff Jr. would pick up where De'Aaron Fox left off after going to the Spurs. I don't think the Kings are in a super clean spot, but I'd rather go for Acuff than Wagler here probably, because I consider Wagler to be more of a 1.5 type of guard rather than a pure 1. The Kings maybe could use more of a pure point guard, but to be honest, I wouldn't be mad either at drafting Wagler, who's more scalable and versatile. Still, Acuff has links to the Kings front office. Kings GM Scott Perry coached his dad at Eastern Kentucky, so this just seems logical to me. I expect Acuff to be a fine NBA player, and the questions probably come down the line as to whether he is a point guard to truly build around or not. Since I'm not sure Keaton Wagler is a true point guard in the NBA, at least initially, I think the Atlanta Hawks would really make sense here. Wagler would be able to handle and score, but the pressure on him to do so would not be overwhelming. Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker can all handle the ball, while Jonathan Kuminga can also create his own shot. Plus, Wagler is just as comfortable playing off the ball, where he'd add value with his three-point shooting, which in my opinion could be special, as well as his offensive rebounding that's been slept on. We saw more of that very early in the season before Wagler truly broke out for Illinois. The Mavs' new GM, Mike Schmitz, appears to be targeting a rotation player with versatility at number 9, so I've gone for Yaxel Lendeborg here. I'm unsure about this pick, I'll admit, because I feel like Dallas's new decision makers kind of tend to take bigger, younger risks, but I just think Lendeborg is a great fit next to Cooper Flagg and even Kyrie Irving or Derek Lively as well. He's a Swiss Army knife that can dribble, pass, and shoot to different extents while staying efficient and defending guards, wings, and bigs. At 10, I think Milwaukee just needs to go for the best player available here, and for me right now, that's Kingston Flemings. If Giannis stays long-term, then Flemings should also fit next to him, but I'm not worried about that at this juncture. Flemings is a super intelligent point guard who's probably a top 2 passing prospect in this draft class. He's also a tenacious and pesky defender who should be really annoying on that end in the NBA once he bulks up. However, I still have questions about Flemings' physicality, and then, most of all, about his three-pointer. Morez Johnson Jr. to the Warriors is a really cool fit, and I think he's the sort of mature, safe floor prospect that Golden State should target. For me, this is especially the case after bringing Steve Kerr back. It doesn't make sense to draft a rookie in need of lots of development for either Kerr, or maybe, more importantly, for Steph Curry's last few years. Johnson can contribute sooner rather than later for the Warriors with his rebounding, switchable defense, play finishing, and overall physicality. Plus, I think he has enough feel and all-around skills to not struggle with Golden State's high demands. I just released a video on Jaden Quaintance, so make sure to check that out, but I think he's a stud who should definitely be a lottery pick despite his injury concerns. At his best, Quaintance is a defensive monster who accumulates steals and blocks like there's no tomorrow. He can protect the rim, hold his own in the post, and switch onto ball handlers on the perimeter just fine. Then, on offense, JQ has a pretty simple fit as a play finisher, but he's shown intriguing flashes as a creator as well. OKC could afford to gradually bring Quaintance, who's still super young, back to full health, even if he doesn't play as a rookie. They're so loaded, this is a risk worth taking. It kind of feels like Miami is always picking around this range, but I'm going BPA again here with LeBaron Philon. Any team in the NBA could use a guard that can dribble, pass, shoot, and I think probably defend. I'm really high on Philon. He's number 9 on my board right now, but I could see NBA teams having questions about his skinny physique and just preferring a freshman over a sophomore. Still, Philon really improved in his second college season, taking a big-time leap as a three-point shooter and building on his interior scoring and playmaking as well. I said this in my video about him, but a super best-case outcome could resemble a smaller Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. With the last pick of the lottery, Dalen Swain goes to the Charlotte Hornets at number 14. Truth be told, I like Cameron Carr and maybe Nate Ament more than Swain on my big board. However, I do love the idea of Swain's non-stop rim pressure on this Hornets team, which can sometimes be too reliant on perimeter shooting with LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, and Brandon Miller. We're outside of the lottery now, so my explanations will get a bit briefer, but Nate Ament fits that slap philosophy the Bulls are looking for now, and this is a range in the draft where it becomes pretty tough to pass up on him. This is especially the case if you're a team with multiple picks like the Bulls or the Grizzlies who have the next pick, because even if Ament never reaches his scoring potential, I trust him to be a competitive defender with a mature frame who can make spot-up threes, push in transition, and has enough feel as a playmaker. I think the Grizzlies could maybe opt for a more physical player here, but since they're fully rebuilding, I'm never going to be opposed to long, athletic wings who can score and defend. Cameron Carr fits how the Grizzlies have built in the draft recently with G.G. Jackson, Jalen Wells, or Cedric Howard. He's also more of a two-guard than any of those guys, so I'm not worried about a positional overlap at all, even though I do think Carr is a wing. Plus, remember, Memphis drafted Darren Peterson at 3 in my mock here, so Carr would be a great off-ball weapon for these new-look Grizzlies. I know I drafted Jaden Quaintance for OKC earlier, but I'm doubling down with another forward in Hannes Steinbach. Steinbach can be more of a short-term contributor when thinking about JQ's injuries, but also about Isaiah Hartenstein's long-term status on the Thunder. The German big could be a worthy successor for his countrymen in the front court. Now, I find Steinbach to be pretty limited outside of his rebounding and transition scoring. Plus, I have serious questions about him as a defender. But given OKC's roster and Chet Holmgren being around, those concerns probably matter less. Charlotte's second first-round pick will go towards a guard that backs up LaMelo Ball, at least initially. I was between Ibuka Okori and Bennett Sturts here, but I prefer Okori's youth and pace, which I think could almost be a like-for-like swap when LaMelo is on the bench. I still have questions about how heliocentric Okori is, or whether that was because he had to carry a huge load at Stanford. Plus, he tilts towards scoring more than passing a bit more than I would like from point guard. But overall, there is a ton to like about Okori's absurd self-creation and scoring. Number 19 will probably be a slip for Braden Burries. This is not a knock on him, it's just how my mock shaped up. I'm not convinced Burries is a 1 in the NBA. He's not exactly a 2 or a 3 either, but that's why this context in Toronto would fit him really well. For the last few years, I've always been of the mindset that you want three-point shooters who can make decisions and defend next to Scotty Barnes, so Burries definitely fits that billing. Similarly, now that Victor Wembanyama might be the absolute best player in basketball, I will always want to surround him with players who are long, can shoot, can make decisions, and can defend. I'm going with Sergio De La Gea from Valencia here, who might end up a lot higher on my final big board. De La Gea can shoot threes, he can even play as a point guard, and he has good size at around 6'6". My question is who he defends at the NBA level, but I think the Spanish prospect is smart and tough enough to figure it out. We'll see what happens tonight, but after watching the playoffs, I'm convinced that the Pistons and Cade Cunningham need more guards who can dribble, pass, and shoot. Bennett Sturts has proven for years now as well that he can do that. However, I'm unsure still about his NBA translation when it seems like the system he's played in has been basically engineered for him to thrive. Still, there's too much talent there for me not to like. The Philadelphia 76ers, plain and simple, need players on their roster with less limitations. At this stage in the draft, whoever has shown the potential to dribble, pass, shoot, and defend to any extent needs major consideration rather than a specialist. I'm going with Amari Allen out of Alabama here, who could still return to school, though Allen Graves, Kareem Lopez, or Tunde Yesufu could make sense for the Sixers as well. I want the Atlanta Hawks to add more size, rebounding, and athleticism, but they're also kind of rebuilding, so I've gone for a boom or bust prospect in Chris Sanak. If Sanak works out, then he's a 6'11" big with a 7'5" wingspan and bouncy athleticism who can dunk everything at the rim, while probably also shooting threes down the line. However, I still have serious concerns about Sanak's feel on both ends and his extremely inconsistent rim protection. At 24, I think the New York Knicks should be thinking about taking a big while considering Mitchell Robinson's future. I thought about Zuby Ejiofor from St. John's in Queens here, but I think the Knicks could want a little more athleticism in the front court with Flory Bidunga instead, who is also a simpler plug-and-play fit. Keep in mind here, Bidunga could still go back to school to Louisville. The Los Angeles Lakers are building around Luka Doncic, but the move should always be to surround him with defenders, athletes, and shooters. Koa Pete fits the first two categories, definitely not the third, but developing such a high pedigree prospect into a Jared Vanderbilt type would make a lot of sense for LA at 25. At 26 for the Denver Nuggets, I love the idea of Malik Thomas zipping around while Nikola Jokic makes the most of his movement shooting, cutting, and overall scoring firepower. Then, Malik should also be a pretty capable point of attack defender on the other end once he gets stronger. I think this would be an awesome fit should he stay in the draft. The Boston Celtics need frontcourt size and rebounding, but they also covet players who can defend multiple positions and really think the game. Zuby Ejiofor from St. John's might be a little undersized for a big, but he can do all of those things while evoking serious shades of Colin Murray-Boyles. In a scaled down role, I think Ejiofor could be a draft steal. Truth be told, I think Tyler Tanner from Vanderbilt should go back to school to keep getting stronger and flesh out his three-point shooting, but he's also appealing enough to be a first-rounder should he stay in the draft, given his extremely high feel on both ends. Minnesota could afford to give Anthony Edwards more ball-handling help, and if Tanner can play relatively quickly in the NBA, maybe his size could be insulated by Rudy Gobert. Minnesota drafted Rob Dillingham before, so I don't think they would be super put off by Tanner's size or lack thereof. The Cavs usually have a couple of ball handlers, a big, and then they want one of their wings to be pretty physical, so why not Kareem Lopez? I'm unsure about his foot speed and three-point shot when it comes to the NBA, but he's a longtime pro that can play a lesser role on a title-contending team while contributing as a slasher and doing enough of the little things. If the Mavs want ready-made contributors, Isaiah Evans looks the part with his dynamic movement shooting, decent enough passing reads that leverage his scoring, and his improved defense. He would reunite with his former teammate Cooper Flagg here in Dallas, and I think Evans at 30 is the perfect high-value pick. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a comment telling me who you would want your team to pick in the 2026 NBA Draft, make sure to subscribe to the Floor and Ceiling Substack, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.